Well, I most certainly would like to thank our president for adding another layer to the topic at hand today because, yeah, what he said yesterday really adds another layer to what the future of the movies could end up looking like. I mean, to talk about this tariff that he's talking about here, I mean, this is, yeah, we're going to delve into this pretty early on in here. But it's okay, everybody. He said it himself. I'm not looking to hurt the industry by doing this. Yeah, almost like the same thing that he was saying when he was trying to go after 60 Minutes, basically saying that free speech is basically on the line because, heaven forbid, that an institution that will certainly have a much more lasting legacy than anything that this guy has done in the last is pretty much 5 years, well, basically 8 years to come after all this is said and done, But don't worry, folks, don't worry. The president has put it into the hands of a capable person. Guess who he's put the hands of changing Hollywood around and making it great again? The bumbling principal from Bratz who hasn't done jack shit of noteworthiness in the last, 30 years? Plus, I'm very curious about how Sylvester Stallone and Mel Gibson considered this situation, especially when you consider that A, both of them shoot movies overseas, and B, Mel Gibson is supposed to be literally shooting Passion of the Christ 2 in Italy this September. Oops. I'm sure he's going to take it very well, because we all know Mel Gibson takes news like that very well. But, okay, yeah, I've got a little bit of extra new buzzworthy things to talk about with this whole thing in general. Maybe not even buzzworthy things in general, but we might as well start a discussion off with this, and then I'll get to what I want to cover with the rest of this topic about the future of the movies, because, let's just be honest, assuming that this actually goes through, this whole stupid tariff idea, we all know what it's probably going to end up being. More emphasis on AI in film, because clearly the more that we use AI in movies, the less it proves that Hollywood went on a strike 2 years ago for absolutely nothing, because evidently the people who were even on strike 2 years ago have now turned their backs on the people that believed in them because they really believed that AI wasn't the answer. I'm looking at you, Natasha Lyonne, who literally said that you're going to be directing a movie that's literally going to be using mostly AI. Wow, hypocritical much? I mean, let's just basically what the future of movies basically becomes at this point, because it's just like, AI essentially will become the norm in the US, because why go across the seas to go film a movie? We can just go ahead and bring the international feeling to the studio here, because clearly we have reason to believe that AI will never not look like it's cheap or looks completely ridiculous or looks completely flawed, because clearly you have not seen many YouTube videos recently where you've seen so many AI looking videos that look absolutely horrible by all means. So that's my only thing that I'm going to bring up with this particular thing of this news that's been breaking over the last 24 hours. But I want to go ahead and get to the full topic that I want to bring up here, the future of the movies themselves. When we last left off a couple weeks ago, we kind of got an idea of what the look of most of the movies of this decade were pretty much like. And we essentially came down to the conclusion that simply technology, audience preferences, and the rise of streaming services, at least early on in the decade. Once COVID kind of took a back seat and we finally got back to normal, streaming services really didn't become much of a factor, and essentially all those high streaming subscriptions that came during the COVID peak have since gone down considerably, considering that most people already had the streamers as it is. But not only that, though, I think the big thing going into the future of the movies now is distancing streaming service movies to theatrical movies, because right now there really isn't that much of a difference between movies that clearly should be in theaters or movies that should be playing on streaming services. It's kind of like it feels like the studios have no idea what example to use for that situation. Like, what do you do? do. Like, why should a movie like The Electric State, which costs $330 million, be forced to be sitting on a streaming service where it's never going to make that $330 million budget back? Or something like The Gorge, or hell, half the Apple movies on there that cost $100 to $200 million that will never make a profit back, no matter how hard you try. Like, that's one of the things I think the Hollywood studios really need to look at going into the future, is figuring out which movies should be playing on streaming services that will be successful, and which ones should be playing in theaters. I don't think a big budgeted movie should be playing exclusively on a streaming service. There has to be a way to do it. Like the way that MGM is doing it right now. They have movies that are exclusively on their streaming services, but also in theaters. And the movies in theaters are the ones that have the bigger budget, such as, Red 1, The Accountant 2 just recently. Creed 3 was one of the great examples of that. I mean, that's an example of something that should be done with movies of that caliber. Like, those are the type of movies that should be seen on a big screen, and you can still do those movies that are specifically for streaming services, because, yeah, there have been some movies on streaming services that deserve to be on streaming services, even bad movies like You're Cordially Invited, or even a good movie like, more recently, Another Simple Favor. But who's really going to be at the forefront of these movies? Who are those rising filmmakers that we should be taking a close look at going forward into the future? And I've kind of talked about it before in the past of who I think some of the best people working in the business right now. Some of the ones right off the bat I can think of. Right now, he and these two are really have one of the biggest hits of the year right now with Sinners. Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan. They are developing something where, their name brand has grown over the last couple of years, and people go to their movies because the trust factor is there. It all started all the way back with Fruitvale Station, and then it followed with the Black Panther movies, the Creed movies, and now more recently with Sinners, which is why people get excited to see what Michael B. Jordan has cooking, especially with the recent news that his Thomas Crown Affair movie is going to be coming out in a couple of years. But not only that, in IMAX too, which you would never think a remake of the Thomas Crown Affair would be something that would fit IMAX theaters. But maybe they're hoping for the same thing to happen with Sinners to happen with that movie. But it's really going to be very interesting to see how that one pans out in particular. Looking at this past Oscars, we saw some notable new names in the scene that are making their mark. Sean Baker finally got the respect he deserved thanks to the success of Anora, with that film winning 5 Oscars that night, most of them by him, except for, of course, Mikey Madsen winning for best actress. But also you have Coralie Fargeat, who also did The Substance, which that director pretty much is on her way to becoming kind of the next generation David Cronenberg in a way. Like, she's really starting to build her repertoire as a whole as a filmmaker, and it's really interesting to see what she'll do going forward with that. And then, of course, you have the Daniels, who did Everything Everywhere All at Once. We're waiting to see what their next movie's going to be like, but the buzz on that movie's pretty good. Bong Joon-ho, who did Parasite a couple of years ago, even though Mickey 17 wasn't a big hit, the movie overall still was pretty successful for the most part, because most people still went to go see it. There's still a love for it, and yeah, I even liked it too, even though the first half of it was probably the strongest part of it. But I think it definitely shows that he's got the potential to become a great rising filmmaker in the future to come. We have a lot of other directors like that. Denis Villeneuve is a great example of somebody who is really building his career through more of his recent movies. This is the guy that did Blade Runner, of course, and the Dune movies. Another name I should bring up, Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan's turning into one of those great horror directors where, anytime his name is attached to anything, people automatically get excited because he's putting a lot of work into his movies, and people are really buying into it because the guy knows clearly what he's doing. In terms of rising actors, of course, you got people like Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya. Mikey Madsen, I think, could be somebody that, right now, she's kind of on that track where, I'm not saying that this is probably the direction she's going to go in, but I just have this weird feeling that she's going to become kind of like the next Audrey Hepburn. Like, every time she makes an appearance, she has that glamorous look to her. Whenever you see her in like pictures online, or like you see her since winning the Oscar. She literally kind of looked like Hepburn a little bit whenever she won the Oscar on Oscar night. So I don't know. Maybe this is something that I'm just thinking to myself, but I don't know. I feel like that's a direction that she probably is heading her way towards becoming. Mikey Madsen, I think, could become the next Audrey Hepburn if she gets the right film roles to make that possible. Speaking of people who are Oscar nominees this year, some noteworthy people: Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande from Wicked. I think they could be potential movie stars in the making. Margaret Qualley, who should have gotten a nomination for The Substance this year, I think is on her way to becoming a bright young actress. Glenn Powell's another name we've talked about before. Great actor. I just wish he would pick some better movies besides the stuff he's picked already. Same can be said for Sydney Sweeney and also Ariana DeBose. There's still some hope for Ariana DeBose to save her career, even though time is pretty much kind of running out for her at this point. Trying to think of who else could be a good rising director coming in. Just this weekend with Thunderbolts, Jake Shire, a guy that, he'd done mostly stuff. He'd done Beef, of course, which everyone kind of knew him for. What he did with Thunderbolts, I mean, this is a film that really kind of made him into the big breakout star that he is as a filmmaker as a whole. It's something that I think maybe that could come in handy in the future with him. Like, he could be on his way to becoming a big director overall. Trying to think of who else I could probably put in this list. Some other names in particular I can think of: John Krasinski. John Krasinski's had a pretty good, successful 7 years as a director with the Quiet Place movies, and of course we're just about a year away from If becoming a 1 year old. And I wanted to watch that movie again because I really loved that movie when it came out last year. I really want to watch it again to see how it holds up a year later. I still think it's one of my favorite movies from last year. Who else do I want to put on this list here? Maybe I want to say, who would I put on a list of rising celebrities to watch out for in movies in the next couple of years? I mean, kind of the other name I'm thinking of here, John David Washington, Denzel Washington's kid, who has really become a good actor over the last 5 years with Tenet, Malcolm and Marie, and, of course, he's on his way to be, he was also in The Creator as well. I still really do think the guy has a lot of potential to become a really good actor overall. Even somebody like Robert Pattinson, like somebody that 5 years ago, nobody would have expected him to be as cool as the cool actor that he eventually would become with stuff like The Batman and Tenet and more recently Mickey 17. I mean, hell, there's a lot of Nepo people, right? Nepo babies out there that are making their name. Jack Quaid, who was in Justin Novocaine, or Ray Nicholson, who was both in that movie and then Smile 2. There are, and hell, look at the people in Thunderbolts: Wyatt Russell, Kurt Russell's kid, Louis Pullman. Then again, Florence Pugh's another name you could probably throw in there. She's probably the more recognizable name in that cast overall, but not a lot of people really know who she is. Knew who she was before the MCU, but certainly after the Thunderbolts, they're going to know who she is, and she's probably going to be a rising star in the making as well. Hell, the people from the Fantastic Four, the big name and the big rising star in that is Vanessa Kirby and Joseph Quinn. People already know who Pedro Pascal is, and Evan Moss-Baccarat from the Bear. I mean, there's a lot of names I could bring up here in general in terms of people who I think the future of the movies are going to be really centered on in terms of star caliber films. In terms of where movies go from here, like I said before, I think there is going to be more of an emphasis on AI in film, even though we pretty much went out. Is Hollywood pretty much? I keep saying we, like I'm a part of this, but no, Hollywood went on strike 2 years ago because of this, and now it seems like it's not even a factor anymore. It's going to happen anyway. So, what was the point of going on strike to begin with anyway? If that wasn't why, if that was a reason why Hollywood decided to shut down 2 years ago, it just makes no sense whatsoever now. But sadly, I think that is the future of movies, especially if these tariffs come into play. That could be something where that comes into play, and you're going to definitely notice a lot of things about the movies that you see that are going to be very, very unusually different and can easily be spelled out right away with how they don't look like what you think they're going to look with the background. Like, for example, like if a movie's going to take place in London or Paris, it's definitely not going to look like London or Paris if AI becomes the norm in movie making. I'm just saying, But in terms of the future of the movies go, I think there's going to be more of an emphasis on more franchise, more reboots, more remakes in general. I think that's never going to go away, no matter how hard you try. I mean, we're already seeing other studios copying the formula that Disney did with its animated classics. Making them into live action movies. DreamWorks is hoping to pull out a big one with How to Train Your Dragon. Like, if that happens, I guarantee you we're going to see more of that in the future. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all if something like a Shrek or maybe Road to El Dorado possibly gets the next treatment for the live-action treatment as a whole. Who knows? Maybe even Despicable Me at Universal gets that chance to go to live-action as well. like sequels, they're never going away. Sequels, that pointless sequels, nobody is asking for. Like last week, we saw we had a trailer come out for Now You See Me, Now You Don't. It's just kind of like, yeah, they're gonna keep making pointless sequels, no matter how much I gripe about them and how much, people will do the same thing. It's just like, who the hell was asking for a Now You See Me 3 or a 2 or even a 1? The first one wasn't even that good to begin with, but I mean, somewhere out there, there's a student, because it basically just comes down to money with the sequel thing in general. Just like, they're not making these movies because they really believe in making a sequel based off of these movies. No, they want to make a movie solely for the purpose of, going into your Walmart one day and seeing the 3-movie collection of Now You See Me with Now You See Me's 1, 2, and 3, because everything needs to be a trilogy or everything needs a sequel, that even though there's no need for one of them whatsoever. But yeah, you get kind of the idea of what I'm trying to say here. The future of the movies overall, it's really going to be mostly, I think what we're going to see as the decade comes to an end is that we're going to see very few movies that are going to be more what we saw like with Sinners recently. I think Sinners is going to be that rare little gem of a movie where, someone takes an original concept and makes it into a blockbuster film. I really don't know how if that's really going to be anything groundbreaking or game-changing. The only thing that's really groundbreaking or game-changing about Sinners is the fact that, they have that unusual deal where 25 years' time, the movie reverts back to Ryan Coogler as part of the deal that they made for that. So yeah, I mean, if anything, if Sinners is a sign of that going forward, it could possibly be something that other studios, other young directors and young filmmakers are going to take notice of going forward. But I don't see anything. I think Sinners is going to be one of those rare little gems we'll come across every year, like that one movie that will break through the norm and actually become the groundbreaker that nobody really sees coming. And that's just my thinking behind it overall. I mean, it could definitely change overall. Who knows? Maybe nothing changes at all. Maybe we just continue doing what we've been doing beforehand. But, I mean, we're at the halfway point of the decade so far. And so far, there hasn't been any real indication of the sudden change of how the movie business has been trying to get back on track since the pandemic started. I mean, basically, it's like once every 2 weeks we start to get like the big blockbusters. Once every 2 weeks we get big movies coming out on home media, streaming, DVD, Blu-ray, you name it. I think that's a trend that's going to sadly keep continuing on going forward here. But then again, I could be wrong on that front. We'll see what happens as the decade goes on. But other than that, though, that's pretty much all I got for you this week on that subject in general. But if you do want to see what I have to say about the look of the movies for the 2020s, check out the video in the corner. Check out the playlist below to see some of the other videos I've done on this show. And I'll see you guys next week with another video. So, with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.